In this playthrough of Kirby's Return to Dreamland, I won't be using a remote to control player 1. Rather, I'll be using players 2 through 4 to move him around. For added fun, I'll be trying to collect as many energy spheres as I can. Oh, and even though I'll need an extra person to control a character for some parts, I'll be the one playing as players 2 and 3 most of the time for extra challenge. And, as not to bother some others who will be helping me on sections where I can't micromanage multiple controllers effectively. I also want to clarify something before getting into the run. Player 1 is the only player that can navigate through the overworld and progress certain text required to continue the game. I'm not going to count that stuff, just moving around in the actual levels. And in case you're wondering why not moving with player 1 is an issue at all, this is one of those games that if you get too far from player 1, you're teleported back to them. By extension, player 1 is the camera and more properties exclusive to that player I'll get into when they come up. So what's the main method of movement? Just make player 2 Kirby and hail player 1 Kirby. This allows us to move around and keep the camera centered on player 2. The downside is that you can't flutter while in this state, which leads to the first obstacle, a ledge just too high to jump over. This one isn't all too difficult, but showcases another method of movement. Player 2 can jump from a higher platform and spit out Kirby to clear the height and distance. The next roadblock demonstrates two things. One, since I can't inhale while I already have a copy ability, they are usually worse than not having them. They are easy to get rid of though, so I do sometimes use them. Second, while having Kirby inhaled, pressing down, which is how to get below this platform, is also the button to fart out Kirby. That's obviously an issue since he's needed to continue the level. If you're precise, you can use Super Inhale. Regular Inhale isn't enough to suck up a player, which is why precision is necessary. You see, to use Super Inhale, you have to shake the Wii Remote. Even if you do this quickly, there's a short delay between regular Inhale and Super Inhale. If timed correctly, you can use Super Inhale while in the air close enough to Kirby to suck him up. There's a key in this stage too, and although it's not cause for concern right now, items that you have to pick up are timed. While holding them, I can't influence Kirby's movement like usual, since you can't pick items up while he's inhaled, so things like this will definitely come up later. When picking up an energy sphere with Kirby in your mouth, he just disappears during the animation. So that's weird. Something else I'll be seeing a lot in this run, but isn't big enough to continuously show in this video, is player 1's Wii Remote getting disconnected. This doesn't usually impact anything, but it is annoying, especially during precise or important moments. The game's main gimmick is super copy abilities, which, like I said before, copy abilities make it so I can't inhale Kirby. So for now I skip the first one, which fortunately is only required for getting 2 energy spheres. Stage 2 has a hurdle, or more accurately ladder. You can't climb ladders while Kirby's inhaled, and going ahead just teleports you back to him. But then I realized something I could do. Spinning Kirby into a wall knocks him back a little bit. If you jump while doing it, he can land on top of another player, so I take out a third controller and spit Kirby in a way that he lands on Meta Knight. This new way of movement is better than the old method in almost every situation, because now I can do what you can normally do in Kirby games, and that's fly over every obstacle. This will still have its own set of problems, of course, which for now is the setup being tedious and only possible on taller walls, but I'll get into the bigger ones in the future. Later in the stage, you're supposed to grab the sword copy ability to get an energy sphere, which I'll be calling a gear from now on because it's easier to say and I'm bad at talking. But it's worth mentioning that with multiplayer, you essentially have access to sword, spear, and hammer with Meta Knight, Waddle Dee, and King DDD respectively. Also, I won't be mentioning every gear, just the noteworthy ones to save time and my viewer retention. The first major obstacle is this ladder going downwards. It may look similar to a previous problem with a fairly easy workaround, but a few subtle differences have major consequences. During a jump, yellow Kirby, who I'll affectionately be referring to as Yerby and blue Kirby as Burby to prevent confusion when calling player 1 Kirby, Kirby has a brief period of time he can start the inhale animation while still moving up, and there's a small fraction of a second where he stays at his apex before falling. When trying to inhale from below the platform while floating, this important time is lost. I tried using player 3 as a platform, but you can't stand on Waddle Dee's spear and you can't inhale while on someone's back. The next thing I did was enter with Kirby on my back, but going down the ladder drops him. But I realized something, this would only happen when using a ladder. Going down a platform is no issue. So really all I had to do was drop down the platform at the edge of it so as not to touch the ladder. This stage was also where I found out that you can spit Kirby on your back with only one player and no extra height required. Meaning I can set this up in most areas of the game and I have a way to recover if Kirby gets knocked off my back. Now that I'm more comfortable with movement, I go back to stage 1 and get the super sword to unlock the area with the 2 remaining gears. The platforming in these sections is the hardest in the game due to the purple goo chasing players that can crush me if I'm not quick. Which of course is made harder since I have to escort Kirby through the whole thing and he starts on the ground no matter what while constantly having to stop to inhale him again. That's because inhaling is typically required to advance through these parts, so I have to constantly spit him out and suck him up again. As for the bosses of these sections, I usually just use Meta Knight to kill them as quickly as I can before Kirby dies. Raisin Ruins Stage 2 is the first water level. This is very bad news since you can inhale while underwater, but you can inhale before entering the water to keep Kirby in your mouth and swim freely. Problems arise when you bring Kirby to another room that's underwater. Unlike most doors in the game where you can go through them with Kirby on your back, he'll always spawn next to you. You can push Kirby while he's underwater, so I do have some control over his movement. Unfortunately, there's no way I can make him go up in this state, but fortunately there's a door just out of sight that will teleport Kirby to me, and when we exit we're still on land. Later in the stage, a gear is behind a door that leads to an underwater room. So when you go in or out of it, Kirby will always spawn next to you. I tried influencing his movement, but you can't push him upwards, so the closest I got was damage boosting him up a little, but not nearly enough. So I had to ignore the gear, but I can still progress without an input from player 1 as long as I enter the water with Kirby in my mouth. The dimension rift in this stage is filled with floating water. Because of this, I have to enter these pockets with Kirby inhaled. Jumping out of water in this state is fairly precise since you can't flutter and the jump isn't optional once you reach the surface. Further in, there's a section where the pockets are between platforms, removing the ability to jump out of the water. The problem is that even if you are underwater, you can't inhale another player who is underwater. There's a precise spot where you can stand on the first ledge without being underwater to potentially inhale player 1 being pushed out of the water, but I wasn't able to recreate it with the next platform. When I tried spitting out Kirby with a large block, it revealed a part of the level that's even worse. The only way to get Kirby here quick enough is by spitting him out with the block, but if I do that, I can no longer inhale him. But you can still push him out of the water, and because I can't control 2 remotes at once that accurately, after all I only have 4 fingers, I'll need some help. Now, I wanted my friend and fellow Challenge Run YouTuber Trent to be player 4 during sections of the game I can multitask with 2 remotes realistically, but our net play was having some issues.
Oh my god, it is actually so bad.
I know. So for the parts that Trent could help with, he'll be talking with me, but otherwise it will be my brother since there's no need for net play that way. With Ben, we first tried spitting him and player 1 into the water pocket. Once they reach it, have Ben push Kirby out of the pocket to be sucked up by me while falling in hopes to spit him out before going too far and catch him on my back. That wasn't working, there's too much of an inhale animation before I gain the ability to spit. So after some more testing, I finally found that by walking on the platform while in the water, I could stand outside of it to inhale. The goal was to use the extra time to finish the inhale animation, but the purple goo would knock me off before the animation completed. So even though I was through more of the animation, it wasn't enough to matter. but then it happened, a mechanic I totally forgot about: grabbing. This time, Ben pushed Kirby off into me floating, so player 1 would grab onto me automatically. The wall pushes us into the water, but also out of it. So as long as I time a mid-air inhale correctly, I can now take Kirby to the door leading to the boss, who is easily defeated for 2 well-earned gears. In stage 4, I take advantage of teleporting back to player 1 to bring the key to me. During the super copy ability section, I run out of time, but you can always go back, making these sections a lot more manageable. Onion Ocean is where the real not fun begins. Stage 1 has this room with no workarounds. I can only push Kirby right into a wall to no avail since there's no door nearby. Or left, which doesn't even give enough height for Kirby to swim by being pushed. So I was forced to use player 1's remote. From now on, I'll be keeping player 1's button presses to a minimum. I'll be counting the direction I press as one thing and will be able to keep holding it as long as I don't stop beforehand. The first one being to hold up so Kirby starts riding his floaty. Holding up won't make him jump out of the water, so there's no point to continue holding it. While he's in this state, you can push him around, so I move him to the wall. Like being underwater, you can't inhale him during this state either, so I try to come up with ways to get him past this. No matter what, it looks like I have to press up on player 1's remote, but I didn't want to have to press right too, so I tried getting damage boosted by this tornado guy. But you get invincibility frames when you jump out of water, and inhaling doesn't work when you jump out either. Pushing might work, but I stopped after a couple of tries because I thought of a way to remove the extra input altogether. I've been destroying the things in this room when entering, but if you don't destroy the blocks, your 1 up press can be all that's necessary if you make it so player 1 gets knocked back onto the blocks. You can inhale him from there to keep the button's pressed count down to 1. The Dimension Rift boss isn't anything too special, that is until after you defeat him. You see, there's a ladder normally needed to exit, and after the fight, Kirby isn't on my back anymore. And walls near water don't work because of invincibility frames, so I can't just spit him into those. This led me to believe I needed to beat the boss without getting hit so player 1 wouldn't fall off, which is actually pretty difficult considering my hitbox is twice as big, but then I came up with a lazier idea. After the fight, instead of grabbing the gears as a player I control, I spit Kirby into them in a way that he will fall onto me as player 3 so that he's riding on my back and I can leave. Stage 2 has an underwater section I can enter with Kirby in my mouth. When leaving, the invincibility frames of the water once again make it so I can't spit Kirby into the wall so that he'll fall onto my back. This time no gear can help, but there's another niche mechanic in this game. When Kirby lands on your head, there's a small window of time where jumping will bounce him far into the air. Invincibility frames now gone, Kirby will grab you. Just don't get hit by these guys like I did and you'll be on your way. One of the gears is behind an underwater door so I can't get it. Another one requires this boot section. Since player 1 being the camera messes with these sections so much, what I did was position player 1 in a spot I could get the boot and move forward with it. I would jump out so it doesn't lose duration and continuously move forward with player 1 on my back to move the camera, then boot again. All of this work has no payoff though, since entering this door is a trap without moving player 1, as you can see later in this level, so I have to skip it. Also, for many parts of this stage, I use Waddle Dee to break blocks and protect the other players since I don't want to spit underwater while Kirby's in my mouth. Stage 3 does not mess around. Doesn't matter how you enter, all players are separated and fall down. Fortunately, it doesn't matter since after getting through the first water section, I can push Kirby from the bottom up to land so I can inhale him for the next part. Everything is good until a door leading to an underwater section. Pushing him left and right won't get player 1 through this alone. Unfortunately, I'm forced into button press number 2 and hold up. I intentionally move as far up as I can so I can push Kirby to the right without any other inputs from him. The current pushes Kirby to the right, which is great, but it does slow down once reaching the next section. Because of this, player 1 can't quite make it past the spike wall. There is a fish on the other side of the wall, which is the best hope for a damage boost, but the spike wall closes too quickly for the fish to get through. I hope I'm explaining this correctly, but off-screen enemies work differently. And to make it more optimal, I intentionally go through the previous section to prevent player 1 from going to the highest platform. I'm not really sure if he's not getting crushed while off-screen or maybe not getting affected by the current, but he seems to go further if I aggro him as player 2, get teleported back to player 1, and move as far left as the opposing current allows, but I still wasn't able to get him all the way through. I tried pushing the crab thing, but it can only go so far without being destroyed. As my last resort, with the help of Ben, we push Kirby into the current while still holding up, but he just gets stuck at the top, which doesn't lower buttons required. So unfortunately, button press number 3 is holding up. The rest of the current section doesn't have any more issues, then I go through this door. Heck. There's a current later in this body of water, but it's too far up to pull us now, so press number 4 is holding up again. I can break the blocks with player 2, and fortunately, without another input, we're pushed out of the water by the current. But there's another issue. Going down this platform with Kirby on my back will bounce him back up. There's not enough time or room to start the super inhale, even if you're on the floaty and jump or just falling down. I tried everything I could think of, stopping the bounce by having a character above player 1, try to use another character to stall my fall, use the flutter with a stack of 3 Kirbys and disconnect the bottom, then middle Kirby. But nothing worked, so it's time for button press number 5. At least it's a down input this time to really spice things up. And then, this stage had the audacity to have another underwater door leading to a section I have to swim up, which means press number 6. But we're not done yet because it leads to a similar section too, meaning I need press number 7. The stage still isn't done with me. There's another section where the only way to move up is to swim up, so input number 8 is required. This leads to another current section, which at first looks like I might need input number 9 to move underwater. But if you clear the enemies in front of player 1, he can go through without being knocked upwards onto his floaty. Then there are these 2 sections where player 1 has to swim up again. I knew if I could inhale Kirby, even at the cost of 1 jump, it would be better than 2 button presses. You can't inhale a player right after they get hit, so with the help of Ben, which I needed because the current moves so fast, instead of killing the enemies ahead, I left them so he got knocked into the floaty. This way, 1 jump with the 2 button was all it took. Without that damage boost, swimming up to the surface would have been an extra button for player 1. Even though that's not the end of the stage, it might as well be. There are a couple of kind of tricky parts, but it hardly compares to the previous ones. Also, I somehow came out of this challenge hating underwater levels more than usual. I don't know how that happened. Stage 3 features these spinning spike traps. The one rotating counterclockwise is easy to push player 1 past as long as you time it properly. The harder one to get to rotates clockwise. It usually knocks us to the left, but if you get knocked left, you're still slightly ahead of where you started, so the next time it hits you, you'll go right. And right after that is another spinning spike, this time blocking my vertical path. The knockback hits Kirby up, so getting past this is not going to be easy. Falling from the right side wasn't working, so I started pushing Kirby to the left, which could easily trap him. Additionally, I knew I needed the donut for more health, so I would get it and then swim downwards to teleport back to player 1. But I also need to push Kirby, so Ben's playing as Meta Knight on donut duty. But before that, I found that Kirby can get through the spike above in 1 hit, which will help here. The strategy is to have Kirby knocked to the left, then to the middle. If the knock to the middle went well, you should be pushing Kirby just above the spike to move right and fall as low as possible. The knockback still knocks player 1 a little higher than he falls, so you have to move him in precise ways to the left while moving him lower to change how high the knockback is. The more he gets knocked left or right, the less he gets knocked upwards. This means we're aiming to damage him in a way he moves to the middle and then immediately back to the right. Of course, this is easier said than done, and most of the time he gets knocked back to the middle, which loses too much health. I do think it's possible, especially with 4 players, for more push, and as much as I'm fine with grinding one little section of a challenge run for an hour, I can't really ask someone else to do that with me, especially if they've already helped with so much in this video. So instead of that, I unfortunately had to hold down with player 1 for press number 10. I might try to get past this without player 1's controller in the future and put it in the description unlisted or something, but no promises. In order to avoid player 1 inputs for the next obstacle, you need more health than you would have going out of the last section if it is possible to get out of it without inputs. But enemies in this game infinitely respawn if they're far enough away from the camera, so you can keep going between these ones if needed. Since I used a button though, I have enough health without that trick to get knocked to the other side through a pit and be in range of a door. Because it's out of water, when I swim again, it's with Kirby in my mouth. But of course, where there's water, there's doors in water that open to more water, because I mean that's how doors work, right? This room has no way to move Kirby up, so holding up is button press number 11. Immediately after that is the same thing for number 12. There's a door in sight this time, which is great because once in it, by exiting, Kirby's teleported up and I can swim to the next door. Only leaving this one is weird because it teleports us away from it on the ground. Oh well, I can work with this. Lure the fish from the right over to Kirby for a damage boost upwards. Once again, a door is in view, and once again I have to hold up on player 1's controller to get past a wall. The next obstacle is just out of range to keep Kirby swimming above ground. Which sucks because no matter how I got hit by it, Kirby and Yerby would either get knocked too far to the left to use invincibility to our advantage, or downwards, which is obviously bad. Right after that is a similar situation, this time needing to go up and right. Needless to say, I need a button for this one too, so I hold up and push Kirby to the right, eventually letting go only to find another wall. At first, I used an up press to get damage boosted to the right and continued to hold it to get to the next saw, but this will kill Kirby at his current health. So instead, while going up, I lured the fish near the top left and destroyed the blocks, stopping Kirby. Still holding up, player 1 got damaged into this area with the button. He stayed there safely while I released the saw and just teleported back to him. But I realized that I could cut down on an input by starting the room over. Using player 1's rear remote, I pressed up, and after reaching the top and timing my right press, I could get past the first saw blade and get to the second one that would knock me to the right enough while still holding up so I don't need to do it an extra time. Kirby's health is low, so I grab the grapes nearby and have just enough health to get knocked to safety. In case you were wondering, I couldn't get this fish to respawn for bonus health. There's no enemy to damage boost off of this time, so I make sure to farm health from the infinitely respawning fish below. Now player 1 can take 2 hits, which is enough to get behind the saw and through the section. This stage does a great job showcasing how I move holdable items around. While Kirby's on your back, you can't pick them up, but you can inhale them so that they come over to you. In this example, Kirby's standing on buttons to keep the path open, giving ample time to make it through. When we reach the end, I just pick up the bomb and wait for it to grow. But that was enough fun for one stage because it's time for more water. These eels knock back players eaten by them in a set direction. In this case, it launches them upwards. Getting player 1 inside is a lot harder than I thought it would be, but after many tries, Kirby sent the right direction and I can push him to the platform. Not all eels direct players where they want to go during a minimal button press for player 1 run though, which quite frankly I find rude. This one launches us back where we came. With nothing else to interact with in this area, I am forced to hold up for my 16th press. Unbelievable. This one won't launch us upwards either. Considering the alternative is a death pit, all I can do is yet another up press. Thankfully, it's all I need to get past the pit. But right after that is another section where all I can do is go up, so I have to hold up yet again for button press number. I definitely didn't say 19 the first time. When we reach the water's surface, there's still a large gap between us and land, which is usually filled by a giant eel. But this eel might be more of an escalator. I try testing just how far I can push Kirby without him being hit until I find the perfect spot. My timing and accuracy will be important too. By accuracy, I mean that I push Kirby the whole time and at a good pace instead of pushing ahead of him or going slower than I should be going. And by timing, I mean that if you push Kirby while the eel moves back, he doesn't get hit. That is thankfully the end of the worst level in the game, Onion Ocean, and the start of White Wafers. The first thing here to give me trouble is the Stage 2 boot section. Trying to flutter with Kirby on your back with one hand and trying to move the camera while jumping and moving with the other is pretty hard, so I had some help. This is one of those parts Trent could help me with because the lag on netplay didn't affect this part enough since we don't need too much precision. Enjoy listening to us play while it lags. It is not your video lagging. Oh yeah, this is actually kind of hard too because it also requires timing to get the big jump, which makes this lag even worse.
I keep stomping on you guys too because I can't see where.
Yeah, because we have barely any control of where we go. Okay. Oh, you got it, and then jump on the blocks. Oh snap! You did it.
I actually?
Yeah, that's actually what I needed. That's all.
Wait, for real?
Yeah,
that was it?
That's it. The dimension rift in this stage features many keys, which isn't too big of a deal until I reached this one. There's not enough time. At least not until I realized a mechanic exclusive to player 1. The goo slows down whenever player 1 is near it. I never made the connection that it was just player 1 and not because it almost killed both of us. Using this, I can intentionally drop Kirby by bumping him into the ceiling. This gives me more than enough time to open the locked door and grab 2 more gears. The ice tricked me, it was actually water the whole time. A lot of sauce in this stage bounce in the water, so aligning them with Kirby can clear the small gap. There's a wall ahead that no damage boost can get player 1 over, so button press number 19 is up. This stage also features water that pushes down too quickly for Kirby to get through, so I have to spit him out a couple of times. Fortunately, the level designers seem to have expected that people would want to spit their friends out to their doom, so Kirby lands safely on platforms. And even though he gets caught in this eel, the door is nearby. I want you to understand what having to move with 2 controllers is like for some of these stages. Here, for example, is the cannon needed to get a gear. I can't get it over this ledge as one escort, so I'm controlling Meta Knight too. If I get knocked off by the mummy, player 1 will die, so I have to focus on that Wii remote to move left. Because of that, Meta Knight fell, but it doesn't matter if he dies, so I focus on throwing the cannon back up. I move forward cautiously and clear the enemies with the now respawned Meta Knight. Finally, I can make it to the door. The cannon breaks the blocks, but I can't break them all with player 1 being the camera, so I throw the cannon as to not lose duration and inhale Kirby to move up. Now I can destroy the rest of the blocks and get the gear. On to Nutty Noon Stage 1. This stage features many bottomless pits, which is bad for me because jumping around with Kirby in my mouth means no flutter, and fluttering with double the hitbox and no recovery after getting hit both typically result in death. The room with the wind blowing up is tricky. Having Kirby in your mouth here makes it so that you can't jump, and fluttering is so fast that I always get hit and have to kill player 1 to restart the room. What I did was hold my breath with Kirby on my back so I would slowly ascend. Stage 3 features wind blowing left, making it hard to get to the top right. You're supposed to use the rope to move against the current because the wind will always move us further back than I can move while fluttering, but if you wait as long as you can to flutter, you can get through this section to move on to one that's much worse. This time, the wind is blowing to the right, and I can't simply run as far in the other direction as possible before fluttering up on account of the floor being spikes and nothing to spit Kirby into. But player 1 getting hit by the spikes knocks him off my back, which allows me to inhale him. The problem is, even spitting him to the left, which ignores the wind, still makes him fall onto the rope, which softlocks the stage, forcing the exit since the only way to get him off of it at this point is to use player 1's remote. Ben helped me with this one. I had him stand all the way to the left, but hitting an invisible wall gives no height, so I had to jump for Kirby to land on his back and get us through this section. Moving forward, I cleared the enemies so as not to softlock the stage again. I was actually able to do this boot section by myself. To get the proper camera angle, I got Kirby damaged into this platform, which was pretty tricky. Then I took the boot and jumped off all of the enemies like normal, but had to jump out of it so I could move the glorified camera once more. And then I realized you couldn't super inhale a spit out player, so I just pushed Kirby a little bit to the side so I could jump up an elevated platform with the boot. Now I can spit Kirby to the platform and put him on my back like usual for a gear. The boss in this level is actually a problem. Yes, I know it's a Kirby game, but hear me out. When you start the fight, Kirby will always go off your back for the cutscene, and there are no walls to spit him back up there. This is where a cool little mechanic comes into play. When a player is inhaled, they don't take damage, so if I ever need to protect Kirby, Burby will heroically sacrifice himself. Egg Engine Stage 3 features these moving conveyor belts. I need to pull a switch to get a gear, but doing that while microing 2 controllers and having one push us to the right is hard. The best setup I found was to float with Burby and Yerby on this wall, avoiding the enemies, while Yerby pulls the switch. The difference between normal swimming and swimming with the pink god in your mouth is demonstrated in this dimension rift very well. Mainly, it removes the ability to use the floaty to move across the top of the water, and instead just jumps us out of it. But not being able to flutter and automatically hop out of water when exiting through the top of a pocket makes this a lot harder too. I end up taking a lot more damage because of these differences, so I have to pick up a lot of food. Overall, it's not too bad though, just took me a couple of tries. Stage 4 has some current sections, but it also has still water between some of the currents. This area is one of those. There's a single enemy that can potentially damage boost Kirby, but it moves very far to the left, so getting hit in the precise spot is difficult, especially while trying not to get hit as Burby, but it is possible with just one. Right after is this part with the toothy fish being the only way to damage boost. The problem is that they always seem to damage boost Kirby to the left when we need to go right. I tried multiple things, even getting the fish from the right to do it, but it didn't work. Then I realized they would spit you out in whatever direction you were facing, so all I had to do was find out how to turn Kirby without, turning Kirby. Like you just saw, getting hit by a fish coming from the right turns Kirby that way. But I didn't realize that at the time since I was so focused on getting him bit in the first place, which the fish on the right would never do. So I turned him by sharing health with him, which is way cooler, so I'm going to pretend it was necessary. After that is the section with currents and eels. The current knocks us into an eel who only spits us out to the left instead of up, so button press number 21 is holding up. But wait, there's more. Like last time, the current moves us into the eels who spit us to the left. Only this time we need to go down. Getting damaged always knocks us upwards, so getting hit isn't an option. I tried everything I could think of, which all culminated into Ben getting eaten by the eel, and as soon as it retracts, break the block to move Kirby forward while we both push him down for the most time, but that still didn't work. So press number 21 is down on the directional pad. Immediately after is a current pushing us to the right and a giant wall. So yeah, press 23 is up. A similar situation ahead has the simple solution of going through a door to teleport us. In this room is a gear with the intended solution of getting the spark copy ability and using it to blow up these blocks so a key falls. I can't get spark, but Waddle Dee's spear has enough range to hit the bomb. After a while, even though I could have sworn I heard the bomb be hit and controller shake, nothing fell. As player 1, I went to check how far off I've been hitting and found something interesting out. The blocks don't load their new state of being destroyed until player 1, the camera, gets close enough to them, so I can't actually get this gear. Really makes you think though, if a tree falls and player 1 wasn't there, did it really fall? This dimension rift has a couple of interesting water sections. If I enter this part with Kirby on my back, he would get crushed, which he would typically be in this state since you need him on your back for the platform right above this. To knock him off, hit him into a block, which is harder to do than a ceiling since it disappears so quickly. Then get ready to inhale him from one of the floating platforms that move to the left so you can swim with him in your mouth. The next part will kill Kirby if you enter without him inhaled. It's more precise than usual since I have to jump out of water, especially when tapping jump even a little too hard will put you back on the platform while also trying to super inhale. It is possible and the rest is easy. Dangerous Dinner Stage 3 has the hardest boss so far. The fight takes place on these moving platforms with gaps between them. Getting hit once is basically a death sentence since all you can do is spit Kirby to the right and hope he doesn't fall. And I got hit a lot since I'm in a small area with a huge hitbox. Using the other characters in this fight isn't great because they require getting closer to the boss to do damage. So what I eventually started doing was coming to the fight with the ice power in my mouth just to spit it out for the extra damage. Other than that, stay low and play it safe to get through. Later in the stage, there's a boot section I found too difficult to control two characters at the same time during, since I would have to move the camera multiple times. So Trent helped me out with this one. I hope you like lag. Alright, so just...
Here, watch out, yeah.
Gonna keep doing this from a safe distance.
Come on, mother. Yeah. Yeah.
Nice, that's...
Ain't no thing to a pro player like myself.
Dude, you earned that one. After that is a key section that upon rewatching the footage I could probably have done fairly easily by taking advantage of teleporting to player 1 more, but I got help from Ben to be safer. Now it's time for the final boss. So wait, you're telling me he was actually the bad guy the whole time? I mean, Kirby's so shaken he can't even move. Oh no, it's an auto-scroller in which I can't influence player 1 in any way without his remote, which means I have to move once here, once to go down here, and this one looked like it might be doable without a button press if I get moved down by the collision pushing me by being precise, but that wasn't enough, so another input, yay. Then there's this crushing section that might require a button, but first I tried something starting from further back. I would use the down press I already had to do earlier to get through this part faster, and then use my up input in the right spot to get far up enough to delay the crushing, but that wasn't enough, meaning it's another press, this time forward, so that's exciting. Right after that, I need to press down to get below this wall. We transition sections, which is important because I'll need the help from Kirby dying and starting over at this section. since you can't share food while riding dragons, because that would make them jealous. Now that Kirby's back at full health, protecting him by killing the enemies and their projectiles is necessary to get him through without unneeded buttons. But then there's another crushing wall I need to pass. Kirby can't get through it without inputs. Even intentionally running him into a wall to mess with timing does nothing, since these parts of the wall open and close at the same speed no matter what. So button press number 28, holding right, is required. The timing on pressing right is a bit strange since I need to keep holding it to get through the next crushing wall. But if I was to start holding it early, I would need to press it again, so start holding it when the wall is about to crush. No matter what, I get hit by these two glowy rocks, but there's just enough health to pick up without any more inputs to move on to the next phase. And you know what that means, dying for full health again. At first, I thought this phase would require at least an additional player to do enough damage to avoid the tornado attack altogether by moving forward another phase, but by shaking the Wii Remote, you can do enough damage alone. Health in the middle and making some attacks target player 2 helps also. Now it's time for the final phase. I mostly just stand in the corner with Kirby in my mouth while attacking with Meta Knight, but there's one attack that can still damage player 1 if he's sucked in. I can just focus on moving Burby while that happens though, so it's not too big a deal. Now it's time to finish this. Okay, now it's time to finish this. And I'm using a PlayStation controller. Okay, now it's time to finish this. Oh, he has another phase. Oh, it's over. With the final boss finally defeated, the game is finished. The run was a lot of fun, even though I had to use a lot more button presses than I would have liked. In the end, I got 116 out of 120 gears, but you know what? Maybe the real treasure was the friend we brought along the way. Thanks for watching. If you somehow made it this far, then maybe you'd be interested in my other challenges and maybe subscribing. I spent a lot more time and effort editing than I usually do, so I hope that was noticeable.
This is you carrying Hunter and I in HOTS.
Quick, Hunter, put this in your HOTS montage.